Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this first edition ever of a public reading of my poem, Shots Not Heard Round the World. It was inspired by a Yankee Magazine article that appeared, written by Anna and Charles Eastman in 1974 centennial celebration of the assault and raid at Fort William and Mary in Newcastle, which occurred way back in 1774. They titled the article, "All This Battle Needs Is a Poet." And as I was researching my book, I thought, my gosh, I've got to stop everything and just write this poem. So here it is. Shots Not Heard Round the World by yours truly, Michael James Geanoulis. Listen, my children, and be aware. The sins of King George were everywhere. He sought to enslave and tax beyond reason, to seize powder and arms in a snow-driven season. But the spirit of patriots was all that George wrought, for it's true they then knew a war must be fought. It mattered not to Liberty's sons and Paul Revere that problems could rise and prove quite severe, that ye old Portsmouth and Newcastle's fort were 60 miles distant from ye Boston port, and they but least cared that travel on horse in the snows of December was risky, of course. Most vital it was, if freedom be got, that New Hampshire be told about the king's plot. They should, if they could, preempt the king's dash and seize for their own that Newcastle stash. Not long after the arrival of Paul, with his call for all to rise and stand tall, drummers drummed and runners ran to spread the word of his honorable plan. From Kittery and Rye, from Dover and Brentwood, by the hundreds they came to help where they could. They schemed and contrived to befuddle the master, who sought to control those barrels of powder, to ensure that instead they'd be able to fight the upcoming war they thought proper and right. So too they knew, with gunpowder needed, and knowing King George will likely advance, to Fort William and Mary they quickly proceeded. Their future success they would not leave to chance. It was freezing and snowing that day in December, when 300 and more rose as a member. At first they began with a subtle demand, but the fort's captain rejected the plan, firing braces of balls as his deadly rejoinder. At that signal they came like bees in a swarm, some wading ashore in waters not warm, to face cannon and musket as possible fodder, but since no one was hurt, 'twas trivial bother. That all escaped death seemed like a clue, that divine intervention came out of the blue. To be candid and honest and perfectly frank, cannons and muskets fired at them point blank. But the creator of lights was supportive, they said, when the crown was unable to paint the ground red. Return fire came not from the rebels who saw brute force would suffice, though substantially raw. They demanded and failed to get keys to the store, but access was gained with the leverage they bore. 100 barrels of gunpowder they won, with more arms next day for another ton. From 2 days of raids at His Majesty's fort, their quest of freedom had much more support. This initial assault on the much-hated crown gave birth to America, a place of renown. And so it is we're proud to remember, and ever be glad to repeat this report, that on 2 snowy days of 74 December, the people had taken His Majesty's fort. Hoorah.